Welcome to the Fabled Academy. Today we are talking to Josh Lau about how to pilot Boltyn at the World Championship in Barcelona. Josh, welcome to the Academy.
Hi, glad to be here again. Today we're going to be talking about Boltyn.
Exactly. And Boltyn is a dark horse, right?
Yeah, if you, I guess you're going to be watching this in a couple days. We just released our World's tier list. We're recording this on Sunday. We recorded the tier list on Friday. In the tier list, we have two dark horses. I will spoil one of them. The other one, you can go watch the video. Exactly. But in the dark horse, we put Sir Boltyn. That was mainly me. My teammates were just like, "Oh, okay, sure, Josh." I gave my justification in that video, and I can also give you a quick summary here. So we expect Bravo to be highly played, and Boltyn is one of the strongest heroes against Bravo because you basically nullify his game plan, right? So what Bravo likes to do is block until he finds a great hand or until he feels like he has to take tempo from you with like Spinal Crush, Crippling Crush, Starstruck, stuff like that, right? So he's blocking a lot. The issue is that blocking Sir Boltyn is not very easy, especially with attack actions. You basically buff all his attacks. You basically block like a Phi deck. That's what we said. And if you're blocking like a Phi deck, you're not blocking very well. And Sir Boltyn also has access to some of the best D-Reacts in the game. He has Steelblade Shunt. He has Soul Shield. Obviously, he has Sync and Fate. And then he also has access to Reinforce the Line as well. He plays around the game plan of Bravo very, very well. And Bravo has a ton of armor, but that only lasts you so long.
Exactly.
There were some other picks as well, but yeah.
Yeah. So for everybody who wants to check out the tier list by the card guys, I linked the video down in the description and check it out.
Yep.
So let's dive a little bit more into detail. When players are watching and want to play Boltyn at the World Championship, what would be the best generic tip for those players going into the tournament?
Okay, I have been doing a video stream series on the Card Guys YouTube channel called Breaking Boltyn, where I explored all of the new tools and underexplored tools that Boltyn had. And the TLDR is that you should be playing Raiden. You can play Raiden supplemented with Sabers, or you can play pure Raiden. Any deviation from this strategy is going to be probably bad. I do think a pure Decimator Great Axe style would be acceptable, but you lose to Dromai very hard. And I think Dorinthia probably is just a better Great Axe user. But we tried many different styles. We tried with the Beaming Blade as well. That's you thought Boltyn had a lot of hoops to jump through, while Beaming Blade has even more hoops to jump through. So don't do that. So basically, play Raiden. You could supplement it with Sabers if you want. I think both are fine. If you supplement it with Sabers, so the nice thing is that you have a bit smoother matchups against the ninjas, against Dash. You can also just pull it out randomly. Like, you don't always have to play Raiden. You can play Raiden like 85% of the time, and play Sabers 15% of the time into certain heroes. And you're also able to play some blues in a switch style deck. Adding blues just makes you better against Iyslander as well. If you're a pure Raiden deck, you're probably running close to 50-50 on reds and yellows. So you literally have no blues in the pure Raiden deck, and that makes you soft to Iyslander. Personally, if I were to bring Boltyn, which there is a decent chance I will be bringing Boltyn, it's either Boltyn or Dorinthia. Like, let's not kid ourselves. I only play two heroes. In my opinion, you probably want to bring a switch deck. This does make your Raiden plan a bit weaker, but it does smooth out your Iyslander matchup a little bit. Whether Iyslander will be highly represented or not sure, but that is one of the roughest matchups for Boltyn. A little bit of help would always be great there.
Yeah. All right, so if any viewer wants to know more details about how to pick Boltyn and how to structure his deck, I would highly recommend checking out the Card Guys channel and check out the live stream that you did. We also have a video on the basics of Boltyn on the Tales of Wraith channel, but we will talk about more detailed information how to pilot Boltyn in the meta now. So we will use the tier list that the card guys did on that channel. for this reference. And let's start with Dromai, who is probably one of the most played heroes and also earned a lot of points in the ProQuest season. So what would be your best tip when piloting Boltyn against a Dromai at the World Championship?
Okay, so this is a fairly tricky matchup that you're going to have to high roll a little bit. So this is where deck construction matters a lot, right? Some of the things that I found are very good against Dromai are Snatch, Bolt of Courage are very, very good because often there are dragons sitting around. So you're going to ensure those hit, right? And you can go for a wide strategy and then end with a Bolt of Courage or Snatch to set something into Arsenal or to keep going, right? On a Via the Vanguard turn, for example. It is extremely important that you do not waste damage on meaningless dragons because your damage, you could get fatigued in this matchup. Keeping it real. Like, if you are wasting damage and you are not running Remembrance, which most Boltyns are not running Remembrance, you basically have 3 big turns. And you got to make the most out of those Via the Vanguard turns. You only have 3 copies of Lumen Ascension. You really have to use those tools to the maximum. So dragon priority here is very, very important. Basically, you aren't clearing anything other than Kyloria and Chromai and Azalea, I guess. Basically, the other dragons, you could just let them sit there. And the convenient thing is that Boltyn actually has a decent amount of poppers. Traditional Boltyn decks are going to be running Bolting Blade and Celestial Cataclysm at the minimum. But you could also run Command and Conquer, Down and Dirty, United We Stand are all fine additions. I've even seen people running cards like Amnesia and there's the other one that has the on-hit, I forgot. Humble.
Is it Senzo?
Well. Sensor is only 5 power.
Yeah.
It's humble. You have options, right? In terms of light cards, there's only 4. There's Social Cataclysm, Bolting Blade, United We Stand, and Red Invigorating Light. So you could play 12 of those if you want. In addition, you could play 3 copies of Down and Dirty, 3 copies of CNC. You could go up to 18 poppers if you want, right? But I don't think poppers is really how you win the game. You basically have enough poppers that they can't just blindly go all in on a triple dragon turn or whatever. Or at the very least, if they do that, you punish them. So that's kind of the key there. So basically, you have to put pressure on them, pop dragons from here occasionally. You're basically ignoring everything that's not Chromai and Azalea and Kyloria and Miragai, right? Because Phantasm, no Phantom is pretty strong, right? So other than those dragons, you're just letting things sit on the field. Yendurai, Uvia, who cares? Just let them be. And so, yeah, that's basically the main strategy against Dromai. Fairly important to get Spirit of Arena on the field as well, because at a certain point, if you've used all your Luminas, you can just give the Dromai player a necklace via Kyloria, and it's fine. So that's a cute interaction there. Is there any other specific interactions I'm trying to think of off the top of my head? Nothing's really popping out. So in general, you would use the Warband Tunic, Iron Song Versus plus Snapdragons. That would be the standard way to play that. So no Arcane Barrier. So you don't want the game to drag out too long because you'll die to Burn Them All or Azalea or some combination of those two. It's not like a deck that is filled with yellows and reds wants to pitch anyways. So yeah, that's basically the general strategy against Dromai. It is a little bit of a tough matchup. The best advice I can give is try to make sure that your spike turns are very spiky, right? So you want to set up in such a way that the best way I found, honestly, is to put 2 Luminous together, just like the Saber combo. If you can go Raiden for 5, Raiden for 5, Raiden for 5, you generally get there.
All right. The next hero that we have at the super sweaty tryhard tier is Azalea. And she is the ranger left in the top tier. Now Lexi is gone. How would you go about Boltyn with Azalea?
Okay, so combating Azalea is actually kind of a similar strategy for heroes with armor and D-reacts. You basically, I talked about this in the tier list video. I'm just going to repeat it here. pretty much verbatim. The best way to combat Azalea is if the on hit is not relevant, don't block it. If the on hit is relevant and you've noticed she's kind of emptied her hand, come off an arsenal, really trying to get that 14 dominate with 3 on hits to hit, then that's when you would block from hand, block from arsenal, and shove your armor, right? Because as soon as Azalea basically goes all in, gets off an arsenal, it's very hard to get back on an arsenal, right? So this generally happens when they use premeditate, because they're relying on the ponder to refill their arsenal so that they can activate those Skullbone and cross wraps again. So basically, when they go all in and you stuff it and then take tempo back, it's very, very difficult for them to reestablish tempo. So that's the main things. Prioritize not blocking. Your health is a resource. If they're just sending a bunch of damage with a bunch of damage and no relevant on hit, who cares? If they're giving you an inertia token and you're going to empty your arsenal and you're not ending with a card, who cares, right? So things that you care about, Red in the Ledger is obviously the most punishing one. You got to block that. Sleep Dart for Boltyn is really, really annoying because he heavily relies on his hero ability. There's a Frailty token is not that big of a deal unless you're planning to start from Arsenal. I'm trying to think of any other ones. Those are the main ones. Remorseless is a little bit annoying because sometimes you could take some damage playing Lumina or whatever, but it's not that bad. So basically, if it says on hit more damage, who cares? So be it. That's TLDR there. You are heavily reliant on your D-reacts. Reinforce the line. That's basically it. I'm not actually sure if you should be running Tunic or Soulbound Resolve. They both have they're both good. So if you are running Shunt and Oasis, which is a little bit unconventional, then you would be running the... But if you aren't, I think there's a good argument for running Soulbound Resolve just for the extra armor. Yeah, so that's... I'm not exactly sure which one is optimal. The Tunic does allow for like big V turns, but Azalea is kind of disrupting you, so you don't always set V into Arsenal. You're not playing 5-card hands into them. You're basically trying to deny them some value, push back a bit, deny them some value, push back a bit, right? So I think both are valid against her. Which one is more optimal depends on your deck build.
Yeah, and we will see at the World Championship how those deck lists end up being built. But the next hero that is pretty interesting because he is very strong going into the meta at the World Championship is Bravo Showstopper.
So Bravo, like I said a bit earlier, is traditionally very, very good for Boltyn. And one of the reasons you would take Boltyn to a tournament at the moment. So basically, you have to react to how the Bravo player is playing. If they're being more aggressive and you notice they're not really showing you any D-reacts, then you need to slow down as a Boltyn player. You need to set your arsenal. You need to kind of wait for them. Very similar to Azalea. You've got to wait for them to go all in on something and deny it as cleanly as possible, right? If they are the more traditional Bravo that is basically playing D-reacts, playing like 65 to 68 cards, and they're really, really slow, and they basically only have like 9 reds in their deck, then you basically are just always pushing against them. Every single time Tunic is up with V, you just go. And you basically the first time you go on offense against them, they're going to use their armor. Don't get discouraged. They have a ton of armor. It is what it is, right? Just keep going. Eventually their armor breaks, and then when you start coming in for 3 or 4 on hit this, that's 2 cards. And as soon as they start laying 2 cards down to block things, they're in trouble. So the first part of the game, they're basically covering up your 3 or 4 with a card from hand and armor. Card from hand and armor. Card from hand and armor. Eventually they can't do that anymore. Plus, the Civic Footsteps gives you a Quicken token. So keep that in mind. So if you can kind of engineer your turn in such a way to take advantage of that, that'd be good. So that's generally why you want to keep a larger hand, because they're less incentivized to block with Civic Footsteps, because it gives you a Quicken token, and actually that's one of the scariest things you can give Boltyn. You also need to be careful because you have Banner of Gallantry, which gives you quicken tokens, right? So you don't want to have two at the same time. So you do need to kind of engineer things a little. It used to be much more straightforward. They were just running Mage Master Boots or Iron Rots. It is what it is, right? But now that they have that Civic Footsteps, you do have to be a little bit more careful on that. It's basically just push against them and make them block like a 5 deck until you get there. You do have to be a little bit careful about fatigue again, because Raiden is not a real weapon. And Raiden is a weapon that is contingent on charging. In general, you are not blocking with any of your power cards ever. That's a common theme among Boltyn. If you're ever laying down V or Lumina, that's probably wrong.
All right. So going into the optimal tier, we have the first wizard on the list, and that is Iyslander. So how would you go about Iyslander?
All right. So this is where the deck construction matters. So if you're the pure Raiden deck, you're running red and yellow, you are going to struggle a bit because you're going to have to keep extra cards to push, which means Iyslander player is basically... So Iyslander basically is going to take out all their attack actions because they're really bad against you. And they kind of know that they don't need... Boltyn's value is already very low. So it's not like Iyslander needs to go mega value with the attack actions. They could just play normal value and actually outvalue Boltyn. They're probably taking out all their attack actions. They're probably playing very arcane focused. So it's very, very important to... Okay, so I just thought of something that came up. If you're playing Tunic into them, I think that's wrong. So I'm like... There's many, many reasons, because they can give you a Frostbite. They can like literally play Encase and lock your arsenal. Like there's many, many reasons why Tunic is wrong. So if you're not running Soulbound Resolve in your deck list, you need to. Even though most of your matchups are Tunic matchups, you still need Soulbound Resolve for the Iyslander matchup. This card alone saves you a ton of health, but it's not easy. This matchup is really, 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 really difficult. You basically are trying to push damage as best as you can. You often need an attack react to successfully break through, because they're just going to block with a non-attack 3 block, a non-attack 3 block. You're basically going to get denied your hero ability the whole game, so you're going to be forced to unlock it yourself. So that's kind of what you have to do. You're going to have to work for your go-agains, basically. And you're basically trying to time your offense when they don't have CLF. So if they have CLF, the game grinds to a halt, and you basically can't do anything because activating your hero ability is one resource, and you can't pay for that, right? So with that said, so there's two ways to approach it. You either go all in YOLO and you don't run any AB, or you run AB1, or you run AB2. There's also considerations with Radiant Flow in the leg slot and Hail of Illumination in the head slot. Mm-hmm. So Hail of Illumination gives you Spell Void 2. The Footsteps gives you... Sorry, Radiant Flow. I'm thinking of Phantasmal Footsteps. The Radiant Flow gives you Prevent 2. The issue is that it's not like the Shadow Prevention. The Shadow Prevention happens on damage resolution, whereas because you have to pay the cost of banishing a card from your soul, the Iyslander, it goes onto the stack, the Iyslander player can respond to it, right? So if you're trying to block things like Aether Ice Vein with Radiant Flow, they're probably just going to win you in response, right? I think the optimal way to play, TLDR, I've been rambling here. I think the optimal way to play is Hail of Illumination, Soulbound Resolve, AB2. I think that's the best way to do it. And you also will have Banner of... Is it Protection? I think it's Banner of Protection. The one that gives Spellbound Aegis tokens on charge in your sideboard. And this is where you would bring them in. So basically, once you have a Spellbound Aegis token, you now have the ability to block a Aether Ice Vein without any issues, because you can Spell Void 2, AB2, and then Spell Void 1 from the Spellbound Aegis token. So that's kind of how... So basically, you need to have enough offense to punch through their disruption, and you have to get kind of lucky, because this is traditionally a really, really tough matchup. Ice heroes have been the bane of existence for Boltyn for a very, very long time because LSS loves to make all our heroes design around yellow cards. Is what it is, right? Yeah, that's basically how I would approach Iyslander. Obviously, if you're playing the Saber build, you're going to have a few blues. Those are going to be very, very useful.
All right, so let's go to the next hero, and that is an interesting one because we have actually 2 dashes on the list. And the first one is the original dash, Extra, Mentor Extraordinaire.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there are 2 ways to approach this matchup. I think they're both valid. You can either go for Raiden or Sabers. I think both are very, very fine. The Sabers does have a little bit of vulnerability, and I would say has slowly been getting worse and worse against Dash. So Pulse Wave Harpoon has been around for a while. That was already bad. But you know what made it worse? Backup Protocol Red. So now they could get back their Pulse Wave Harpoon to disrupt you when you want to go for your combo, right? So I don't know if comboing Dash is actually optimal. And if comboing Dash is not optimal, then Switch deck Boltyn is not optimal as well. So basically, because of... So let's break this down. So OG Dash, almost all of them are going to be running aggro into you, because if they're running control into you and you're running Saber combo, they just lose. So they basically are forced to play aggressive into you, and you have a choice. You can either respond by aggression, or you can respond with Sabers. So let's say you respond with Raiden into Boost Dash. Okay? So you have to keep in mind that Boost Dash basically can't block you very well. The only non-attack 3 blocks they have in their deck are Spark, and nothing else is really jumping out to me. Spark of Genius is basically it, and they never really want to be blocking with Spark of Genius because they're able to Spark for Backup Protocol, crank it, draw a card. They don't have to use their accelerators, right? So they basically don't want to block with Spark of Genius, and their whole deck is attack actions. So basically, you need to recognize as Boltyn, they can't block, and they don't want to block. They're different than Bravo and Rhinar, who actually want to block. Dash cannot block and does not want to block. Therefore, you don't need 5-card hands to break through. You just need an optimal hand that lets you swing Raiden, lets you defend a bit. So Dash's power is a little bit higher than Boltyn's. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. But Boltyn's power turns are on par with Dash's power turns, right? So you basically have to have a power turn or 2 power turns before they have their power turn or 2 power turns. So power turns for Dash involve Spark of Genius, Max Velocity, stuff like that. Boltyn's power turns are Via the Vanguard and Lumina Ascension, right? So basically, you just need to, if you're playing the Raiden style, get in their face and wait for your power cards. If you're playing the Saber combo, I think that's a bit of a risk, especially with Pulse Wave and Backup Protocol Red. They probably have enough disruption and damage output that you probably get disrupted a bit. Now, here's the beautiful thing. If they are running Boost Dash with Pulse Waves and the Backup Protocol Red into your Saber deck, you don't have to combo them. You could fatigue them. So if they are just boosting, they're like, oh my god, it's comboed Boltyn. We gotta go. Boost, 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 boost. And you're like, okay, I'm at like 35 health and you've lost half your deck. Okay, you know what? I don't need to combo. I'm just gonna fatigue you, right? So that is the counterplay there for Boltyn, right? So both play styles I think are valid. Raiden or Sabers. Pick which one you like. Dash IO is a more extreme version of Dash in that they don't want to block and they literally can't block because there's no block value in the corner of 20%, 30% of their deck. So again, you basically take the same strategy against them. I would say it's actually probably arguably easier to combo against Dash IO, mainly because I think it's a little bit harder for them to reach the pulse waves, like the threshold for pulse waves, I think. But they're both play very, very similarly, to be frank. you can play with Raiden or Sabers again. I don't think those matchups are actually that different for Boltyn. The main thing is just if you're playing defensively, it's okay to take damage. You basically don't overblock things that trying to play around Boom Grenade or anything like that. Just if they come in for 5, don't waste your armor on that. You want to save your armor for later. Plus, it could get T-boned or something like that. So you really kind of want to save your armor for that. That's basically sums up the dash matchups.
Yeah. All right. It will be really interesting to see in general, like how the lineup will be at the World Championship, and I really hope to see Boltyn at the top tables.
Well, there is a 50-50 chance I take Boltyn. There's a non-0% chance I do okay, right? Maybe there will be a Boltyn at the top tables. We'll see.
Yeah, I hope so. You already talked in a sentence about Rhinar, and that is the next hero here on the tier list at the card guys. Rhinar Reckless Rampage.
So Rhinar is the worst kept secret among pro players. There are a lot of people practicing Rhinar right now, and we've known this for weeks. It is a deck that was very held down by Lexi. Lexi was possible for Rhinar to deal with, basically. And now that Lexi has rotated and the meta has shifted, Rhinar is actually in a very, very good position. Such that I think this is the deck to bring if you want to break the wheel, right? If you don't want to play the meta and you want to counter the meta, you bring Rhinar, right? And in card games, traditionally, there's been a portion of people that just love breaking the meta, right? So most people, I would say, follow the meta. About 50% of people follow the meta. 20% of people try to break the meta. And then the other 30% are just playing what they love, roughly. And from my experience playing this game, about half the people are meta slaves, 20% of people are trying to counter the meta, and 30% of people are just like me. They're just like, I love Warrior. I'm going to take Warrior. I have been asked by so many people, hey, Josh, you want to learn Rhinar? No, I don't. Okay, so enough story time on that. Why is Boltyn good against Rhinar? In the past, Boltyn was good against Rhinar because you could just saber combo them into the ground. They had no way to disrupt you. But they printed a single card, and you can no longer do that. Scowling Fleshbag makes comboing Rhinar and Levia impossible. One card killed the combo against Brute. You don't play combo against them, so you have to play Raiden against them. Good thing is that Raiden is pretty good against Rhinar, because very similar to Bravo, they have to wait for the right hand. They really want a Blood Rush Bellow hand with a resource card, or they want Art of War or whatever. Sometimes they're running Tunic, sometimes they're running Bark Bone Strapping, depending on what they're running. They kind of have to wait for the right turn, and then they go, which means they're blocking a lot. Now, the issue is that, very similar to Bravo, 80% of the deck, maybe not 80, 70% of the deck is attack action cards, which means they can't block very effectively. So, another thing is that the Intimidate mechanic does not hurt Boltyn that badly, because most of our hands can be fixed as long as we have the right arsenal card. So, the correct arsenal targets in that case would be obviously power cards like V or Lumina, but also just having an attack reaction in arsenal. So no matter what card gets intimidated, what hand you end up with, it can be fixed by your arsenal card. And so that's a very important tip against Rhinar, that your arsenal card matters a lot, right? And then if Rhinar goes for an intimidate against us, and it's our big turn with Tunic V, we weren't blocking anyways, and Rhinar has no on hits. So it's like, sure, intimidate 3 cards, and then swing at me. Take it, and then you reply back with your giant turns. You do have to kind of bait out the Scowling Fleshbag. That is a kind of annoying card to deal with, because if they use it at the right time, it could deny like a Valiant Thrust. It could deny your Lumina if you don't have Spirit of Arena. That's another tip I can give you. Get Spirit of Arena out ASAP. Try to bait out the Scowling Fleshbag, flash in the Lumina, make them cry. And yeah, basically you just play it like Bravo, very, very similar to Bravo. And it should be a very, very comfortable 60-40 matchup. Maybe even 65-35. I think both Bravo and Rhinar are comfortable 60-40 matchups at the minimum.
Okay, so Rhinar is also really interesting in my opinion because the next set will also evolve around Brute, at least for
That's true.
a third, right?
So I might play something Rhinar adjacent next set. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I'll swing a Brute Warrior weapon. We'll see.
Ooh, yeah. Let's see. The World Championship is interesting because, like you said, a lot of people are preparing on their own and then bringing up at the last minute what they are really taking. But we have actually 2 heroes left on the tier list, and those are the ninjas. Both Fai and Katsu are in the optimal list at the Card Guys tier list.
I don't think it's a secret anymore that Ninja does not counter competent Dromais. If you are playing Katsu and you say, I'm very favored into Dromai, I would argue that you are not playing against a strong enough Dromai player. This matchup is very easy for the Dromai player to pitch stack their triple dragon at the end of the game and not give you much tempo with Mask of Momentum because they're not putting very many dragons on the board. And Ninja does not have a lot of poppers, right? So you're basically forced to waste damage into the dragons to clear them. I think Fai is favored into Dromai, but I don't think Katsu's favored anymore into Dromai. I think that's 50-50. I do think Fai into Dromai is favored, mainly because the efficiency of Ember Blade and Phoenix Flame is just really, really high. And Katsu's not as consistent as Fai. Fai is extremely consistent. Every single hand does what it wants to do, generally. I guess your question is related to Boltyn against the ninjas, right?
Yes.
Your question, or we're just talking about ninjas in general?
No, we were just talking about the ninjas in general, but now it's time to talk about when you're going up with Boltyn against these ninjas, what's the best tip to bring into the battle?
Okay, so this is another situation where you could run Sabers or you could run Raiden. So if you're running Sabers, the threats to your deck are CNC, Breaking Point, and Dishonor. Dishonor can be managed with your armor because Dishonor with Breaking Scales is 5. If they have Art of War, sad day, it's 6, right? But generally, Dishonor will come in for 5, and you have exactly 5 armor. So you could basically say no blocks to the whole Katsu line and then jam your armor and play around Breaking Scales, right? But CNC obviously is going to rip a card from you because you don't have 6 armor. Man, if Gallantry Gold blocked for 2, that would have broke Limited as well. But that Monarch Limited. But okay, so those are the threats to your Saber combo: CNC, Dishonor, Breaking Point. Breaking Point is 5, so it's easier to play around Breaking Point as well. If you want to combo them, you basically have to be very, very brave. You have to be charging very quickly on your first few turns because if you see the combo, you gotta go. You can't just hold your cards because that's another turn for them to push damage against you, and that's another turn for them to find disruption. And there gets to a point where if you've leaked enough life and you strike back with a combo, they could just say no blocks and then put you in a place where you have to defend again, right? So let's say the Katsu takes you down to like 3, and then you heal back up to 13 or 14. But now they could strike back at you and threaten your hand. So then it's a really, really bad position, right? So it's really, really important that you charge very, very quickly, very, very efficiently. Generally, I don't recommend Soul Shield against them, but I think that might just be a necessary evil at this point, especially if you're running Warband of Boltyn. That means you're not running Halo, which means you actually have 1 less soul, right? So that's something that's a consideration is if you run Warband of Boltyn, you're better against their disruption, but you're -1 soul. If you run Halo, you basically guaranteed soul. I think this kind of is like if you go first or second. I think if you go first, you run Halo. If you're going second, you probably run Warband, I think. So that's basically you just execute the Saber combo and then end with the traditional finishers like V or beacon. If you're playing Raiden into them, I think this is actually very, very tricky because, especially into Katsu, I think Raiden into Fi is a little bit more fair because if you high roll, you win. If they high roll, they win. It is what it is. We don't need to discuss that because it's basically just a knife fight in a phone booth. The Katsu matchup, though, is very, very different because their on hits are absolutely devastating and you have to respect them. So if they draw an extra card, that's really bad. If they hit Dishonor, that's really, really bad. So you basically are forced to play kind of defensively as Boltyn, and then their damage output is just a bit higher. So that's not really a formula for success against Katsu. So I think against the ninjas, you probably are going to try to run the Saber combo against them. I think Raiden is fine against Fi, not optimal against Katsu. Katsu really denies people from playing 5-card hands. And that's what you need to keep up with Katsu's damage output. Mask of Momentum is also extremely annoying for decks that want to keep their hand. Mask of Momentum, Dishonor, and just the ability to tutor out for combo pieces. Like, if you let things hit, it basically says, okay, you take 3 more damage this turn. There's lots of considerations there. If you are playing Boltyn against the ninjas, though, do bring in Sink Below. I think it's quite important, especially against Katsu. Less important against Fi. You definitely want... Because basically you're going to be blocking things like Red Whelming with card plus armor. If you have Sink Below, you can just block with Sink Below, which is really nice. Basically, 3 extra Sink Belows is equivalent to having 3 extra armor block, which is really, really important. And that's something that people, I think, discount a little bit. They're like, oh, we're just going to go real fast against Katsu. I don't want to see a Sink Below. I want a power card. It's like, well, that, you got to get lucky. I'd rather just play the Sink Belows there. So yeah, that's the ninja matchups for Boltyn.
All right. So this is the last hero that we want to cover in this video, but I would highly suggest, like we said in the beginning of the video, to check out the Card Guys tier list video and also check out the other resources that you already recorded on the Card Guys channel regarding how to play Boltyn. We also have the basics video because before you start to beat the meta with Boltyn, you need to know how to play him in the first place. So definitely check that out.
This is not the introduction video here. You need to be competent in basic Boltyn lines and kind of understanding what he wants to do, how the decks are traditionally built. We didn't really talk about any specific deck builds here. We talked about generalities like this is the rated build, this is the Sabers build. So yeah,
exactly.
Learn how to walk before you run.
That's right. And yeah, at the end here, I want to shout out the Card Guys again because I'm really looking forward to meet you again at the World Championship and really looking forward to the time that we have in Barcelona. Good luck to every player participating in the World Championship too. That'll be great. Anytime we can travel to events is always going to be a good time. So, and it's been over a year now since we've been to Europe. Excited to go there. Exactly. So when this video is out, the players probably are on their way or already in Barcelona. So, like we said, good luck to everyone and thank you for tuning in. Subscribe to the channel and comment if you have any further questions.